Once again, it's the Living Word, coming to you with brilliant instrumental music and devotional song, and in this episode, the unusual story of a hymn familiar to millions of people around the world. To begin, the Salvation Army Band plays a martial air entitled The Challenge. Well, I hope there was a note of challenge for you in that march. Challenge to the dedication of the vigor and spirit of your life to the cause of Christ in the world. And here are the three young ladies of the Salvation Army Trio, dedicating their voices to the glory of God as they sing, "To God Be the Glory."
Praise the Lord,
trio has been reminding us of some of the great things God has done for us through Jesus, his Son. The Living Word speaks of these great things in the words of St. Paul. But God, who is rich in mercy for his great love wherewith he loved us, even when we were dead in sins, hath quickened us together with Christ. By grace are ye saved, and hath raised us up together, and made us sit together in heavenly places in Christ Jesus. But now in Christ Jesus, ye who sometimes were far off, are made nigh by the blood of Christ. The life and death of Jesus made it possible for us to find fellowship with God. And this is the theme of the great hymn, Nearer, My God, to Thee. There is a solemn majesty about both the words and music of this hymn that has brought it close to the hearts of millions the world over. But if I were to ask you, what do you know about this hymn? Now that's quite a different question, isn't it? It's surprising how little we know about the history, the joy, the tragedy, and yes, the adventure and romance that lies hidden behind so many of the hymns we sing from week to week. For instance, who wrote Nearer, My God, to Thee? Are you perhaps visualizing some benign old ecclesiastical gentleman peering through his spectacles as he pens the immortal lines? If so, then you'll be somewhat surprised to learn that this great hymn was, in fact, written by a beautiful young actress. Sarah Flower Adams was the daughter of a famous British journalist of the early 1800s. She was not only a beautiful young woman, but it soon became evident that she possessed extraordinary talent also. She became a close friend of Robert Browning, the poet, and is believed to have been the inspiration for at least one of his great works. She herself wrote verse, and her work was highly praised by the critics of the day. Essayist Leigh Hunt said of her that she was a rare mistress of deep thought, while William Macready, the great dramatist, stated, with her beauty and talent, this young woman can have the world at her feet. The world at her feet. Oh, yes, the future looked bright indeed for young and beautiful Sarah Adams. But then came the first real tragedy of her life. Her father, whom she adored, was thrown into Newgate prison for publishing his honest political opinions. Then, as if this were not enough, the man she had married was suddenly faced with ruin. A brilliant engineer and inventor, he had invested heavily in a plant of his own, only to see the whole venture crash about his ears. In spite of, or perhaps because of these setbacks, Sarah Adams now turned to the theater. Coached by one of the great actors of the time, she studied Shakespeare, and finally made her stage debut as Lady Macbeth in one of London's foremost theaters. She was a naturally gifted actress and scored an immediate triumph. But then came the cruelest blow of all. Preparing for further engagements, she was suddenly taken seriously ill. The medical diagnosis was hemorrhage of the lungs. In those days, the word cancer was avoided like the plague. Sarah Adams was advised that her stage career, hardly begun, must now be relinquished for her very life's sake. Sick at heart as well as in body, Sarah Adams nourished the only true source of strength she knew, faith in God. It was during this period of great trial that she wrote the inspired and inspiring words, Nearer, My God, to Thee. She was to live a few years longer, but she died in 1848, still a comparatively young woman. I think the first lines of this unusual young woman's hymn deserve special thought. It is so easy to sing them and yet miss their significance and deep meaning. Nearer, my God, to Thee, nearer to Thee, e'en though it be a cross that raiseth me. Here Sarah Adams is saying, I'm drawing closer to Thee, my God, even though on a cross of suffering. It's an affirmation that God often uses tragedy to bring us into a more intimate knowledge of his strength and love. At least 2 great American presidents recognized this important truth. When President McKinley lay dying from an assassin's bullet, he whispered, Nearer, my God, to Thee, e'en though it be a cross, has been my constant prayer. The hymn was also Franklin D. Roosevelt's favorite, and he left a last request that it be sung at his funeral. It may be that these deeply moving words will come to some with new meaning, with added comfort and strength, as I sing them for you now. Nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee, e'en though it be a cross that raiseth me, still all my song shall be nearer. Thy praise, out of my stony griefs, Bethel I'll raise. So by my woes to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer. Stars forgot, upward I fly. Still all my song shall be nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer to thee. Join us again, won't you, when we will seek to learn more of the living Word and of Him who is, in very truth, the living Word. The living Word. What do you really know about the world's bestseller? This free Bible correspondence course is yours just for the asking. Simply send a letter or postcard to The Living Word, care of this station. Do it today. Do it now.